Rhonda Patrick 是美国著名生物化学博士，她常常在各大英语 Podcast 以及自己的平台分享各类健康新知，内容涵盖有氧、重训、桑拿、营养、保健品、TABATA、HIIT。为了让大家更快吸收 Rhonda Patrick 的心法， Life Kaizen 将为大家把英语圈的生活改善新知，定期以超浓缩加画重点的形式制作成影片，供各位朋友参考及分享。您的支持是我持续做这个节目的动力，喜欢的话请务必订阅、点赞、按小铃铛哦。
What is possibly worse than smoking when it comes down to life expectancy?
Yeah, it's funny because we were talking about this a moment ago, and it sort of blew my mind to see some data that looked at life expectancy and the omega-3 index, which is a really good way of measuring your omega-3 levels. Everybody knows smoking is bad for you, right? I mean, that's like common knowledge. Everybody knows that. However, when you look at life expectancy and you sort of stratify the data according to smokers and non-smokers, smokers with a high omega-3 index, in other words, they have high levels of omega-3, have the same life expectancy as non-smokers with low omega-3. And it's just kind of mind-blowing because not getting enough omega-3, not having a high omega-3 index, was as bad as smoking with respect to life expectancy. Now, a lot of people, when they think about smoking being bad, they think about, oh, cancer. Smoking increases cancer and lung cancer, you know. But that takes sort of decades to accumulate the kind of damage you need, you know, to increase that risk of cancer. It's your cardiovascular health that's at high risk with smoking. And it's not a linear risk like cancer is. Like the more packs you get, you know, under your belt, the more packs of cigarettes you get under your belt, the higher the cancer risk. But with risk of heart attack, risk of cardiovascular disease, it doesn't take as much. So it's one of those things where smoking really negatively affects cardiovascular health, and that's the actual thing that omega-3s are very beneficial for. It's just kind of a mind-blowing way to think about, because I think this came out back in like 2009. It was a study out of Harvard. And I remember reading this study, and the headline was Top 6 Preventable Causes of Death. And these are things like, okay, not smoking, that's a top preventable cause of death, right? Early death, early mortality. Hypertension, right? So avoiding hypertension. Those things were obvious, but what was up there was low omega-3 from marine sources. In other words, from fish, right? So there's omega-3, there's DHA, EPA. Those are from marine sources. And it was from the fish that was identified as one of the top preventable causes of death. And that was very intriguing because it's like, oh, you know, that's an easy nutritional. Most people kind of think of things to avoid, things to cut out. But what you're not getting is, I like to focus on that. You know, what are you not getting in your diet? Scientists from Harvard had attributed about 84,000 deaths a year to not getting enough omega-3. In other words, people that were having that low omega-3 index, predominantly from affecting cardiovascular-related mortality, right? But what was also interesting was that the same number of deaths were attributed, so about 82,000 deaths a year, were attributed to eating trans fats. Again, everybody knows trans fats are not good for you, right? I mean, it's on every grocery shelf, like, you know, that you walk into, it's like zero trans fat, right? You buy a bottle of water, it's like zero trans fat, right? But no one's thinking about that when they go into the grocery store. Oh, am I getting my fish today? Am I getting my omega-3 today? Because the same amount of deaths were attributed to not getting enough of that as for getting trans fats. So again, right, it's just a way of thinking about it where, and this is just like scratching the surface.
And, you know, to kind of wrap it up with a bow, like if someone's shopping for an omega-3 supplement, one thing that I've noticed is that ones that are in a triglycerol form, they're proud about it and they put it on their label. However, it's not always easy to find ones that are in, you know, if you're in ethyl ester form, like you have to kind of look. So what are sort of your guidelines when someone's shopping for an omega-3? Don't have to name brands, like shopping for an omega-3, like what are the red flags? What should they look for?
I think there's some good guidelines that can be followed with respect to finding a decent omega-3 supplement. Personally, I think that triglyceride form is probably better. There's some animal evidence that it's incorporated into cell membranes better than ethyl ester form, which makes sense. But again, you know, that's animal evidence. So my personal preference, I do think that triglyceride form is better for that reason, also because it's more bioavailable. If you want to go out and buy a supplement, I think that finding the triglyceride form, you can find it, or you can always just email the company and they'll tell you if it's not like available. But I do think that it is good to look at third-party testing sites. And International Fish Oil Standards is one, Consumer Lab is another. I really like IFOS.
我这里插嘴一下，基本上有 IFOS 认证的鱼油都蛮贵的，但确实 IFOS 的好处就是资料透明，还可以依据生产批次查询。我目前吃的品牌是有 GOED 认证的啊，至于这个 GOED 认证嘛，反正有比没有好了。
Although it's a lot more work sifting through their data. They do have a lot of brands on there where they measure important factors. And I think those factors are the actual concentration of DHA and EPA, because a lot of times these aren't regulated. So the concentration can be much, much lower than, I don't think I've ever seen it much higher. It's usually much lower than stated on the bottle. So the concentration, you want to make sure you're getting a good concentrated form. And then you want the total oxidation to be like on the lower end. I like lower than 6. I think definitely lower than 10. Like, you know, you don't want to go above 10. But if you can get lower than 6 total oxidation, that's where I think it's really, so the combination of the triglyceride form, lower total oxidation, lower than 6. Most of these supplements are lower in mercury, PCBs. That data is also there. So you can look for everything on that site.